Hey everybody, how is it going? Welcome back to the channel and to another stock market day update. I know I haven't done a video in several days because I've been super busy, so I thought I would make a little bit of an update today. So I'm going to go over this bit of news right here, and then I'm going to get into the market indices and go over, the current state of this so-called summer rally that I believe that we are in, and I just give you my thoughts on what's been going on lately in the market. But first, start off with this article right here because I thought this was actually a pretty important piece of news. So something big that is coming down the pipeline. But this article talks about NVDA, Advanced Micro Devices, or AMD, lead the chip rally as Chuck Schumer says the Senate is moving forward on the bill. Now, which bill are they talking about? They are talking about the CHIPS bill. Schumer says we are moving forward on the CHIPS bill. It's going to take aim at the national semiconductor chip shortage. It will lower costs for American consumers. I doubt that. And it says it will boost scientific innovation and jobs. Now, that probably is accurate. And it says NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm all gained roughly 2%, and other chip stocks like NXP Semiconductor, ON Semiconductor, and Broadcom also rose. Now, Broadcom is one of my most favorite stocks that I actually don't own directly. It just seems like that thing never really sells off much. I guess it's just because it's such a high quality company. But hopefully one day I'll be able to get in on some Broadcom. I actually just added NVIDIA to the portfolio, and it took forever for that thing to finally come down to a price where I felt comfortable starting a position in it. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Says Schumer's comments came just a couple of days after the Senate voted 64-34 to advance legislation that some have called the CHIPS Plus bill, which would give $54 billion in subsidies to encourage manufacturers to build foundries in the U.S., as well as a new 4-year 25% tax credit. I think that is probably the bigger part of the bill. But it says in Thursday's note to investors, a Citi analyst noted that the bill could pass as soon as next week. Malik added that the firm's base case for wafer fab equipment in 2023 is $80 billion, but could go as high as $84 billion if the bill is funded on time and Tier 1 foundries maintain a flat capital expenditures. Earlier this week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi expressed support for the legislation. Surprise, surprise, because she has been loading up on NVIDIA. So I guess her luck in the market really changed once she started making the laws. But that news, I think, was rather important on the day, and I think that is going to be actually rather important for the summer rally, if we do indeed get one. All right, so let's jump over to some market charts and take a look at how the market is doing and if we got a potential summer rally on our hands. If we look at the QQQ or the NASDAQ and zoom in, we can definitely see that we are blasting above all of these moving averages and forming a very nice little creeping uptrend. Now, how these usually work when they end up blasting off is they do one of these type of numbers, kind of have a little bit of a trend that's moving up and down. But it kind of stays within the same little channel as it's doing right now. This is probably going to get nasty and messy. But what you're looking for is when we get a pivot high, pulls back into the channel, get another pivot high. This one really didn't go to a pivot high, or was pretty darn close, but didn't quite make it. Pull back down into that channel, and then you get a break above it, which we are getting right now. And then what you need after that is a move down. And instead of moving down into the channel, it comes down on a recent high or a recent ceiling and then has a move up. So something like this is what I'm looking for. It's actually more common, at least in my experience, in common stocks versus indices. But I mean, this market is so oversold, so I wouldn't doubt it if we do end up having one of those type of moves. Let me get all these things off here. So basically what I'm looking for is a move down to this area right about here. Let me see if I can make this relatively straight. So if it comes down into this area right here, and there's also moving averages that are clustered in that support area as well, that's another reason why I think we could be getting into one of these type of scenarios. So once you get into a creeping uptrend like this, blast through to a new high, and instead of pulling back into the consolidation range, you make a bottom right on top of another high, and then usually get that trend acceleration. So hopefully we end up getting that, and if that does happen, definitely we will definitely be in a very nice summer rally. But it's really nice how the market is setting up, but it has set up nicely for us before in the last several months, only to rip our hearts out and go lower. But I'm still optimistic just because the market is so oversold that even a move up into this area right here is a rather small retracement from the overall downtrend. So I just think we're overdue for a move like that, and that's what I am planning for. Let me get that sucker out of here, and let's jump on and take a look at the spider or the S&P 500. You can see the S&P 500 looking very good as well. So a move back down to this area right here would bring it down to the 50-period simple moving average again, and probably into one of these two moving averages, the 8-period exponential and the 21-period exponential moving average, that are going to be rising up into that area. So I mean, we are getting into the perfect setup zone. So hopefully the market doesn't disappoint. But looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, same thing. Move down, gap up above those moving averages, and now we're above all of those moving averages, and it is holding. So that is a very good sign. And taking a look at the IWM, you can see the IWM is performing a little bit better than the Dow and probably the S&P, so that is a very good sign. The IWM and the NASDAQ look like they're performing just about the same, and I think those two have a better chance of leading the market up than the Dow for sure, and probably the S&P 500 as well. I would bet if it's risk on, the IWM and the QQQs are probably going to be the ones that lead us higher. Now let's take a look at the USO real quick. We can see that oil had a move up into these moving averages. I believe I talked about that in my last video. Don't quote me on that, but that was what I was kind of expecting. Move up into these moving averages and then a rollover. We only have a little bit of a rollover starting so far, so I wouldn't really call it a big move down, but I would expect the rollover to probably take us down to that 200-period simple moving average. Now, if something happens with oil, with the supply of oil, we can easily get a move higher, but just the way this trend is starting to play out, I would expect a move down to the 200, and it looks like it's already starting to slow down. So if it gets down to that 200, I wouldn't expect it to go much lower, and I would expect a short-term bottom to happen on oil if that does happen. But let's take a look at some of the semiconductors, since I talked about that earlier in the video. Let's take a look at SMH, which is the Van Eck Vectors Semiconductor ETF. You can see we have a nice bottom that has formed in this ETF. Had a move down, a sharp move back up, held that floor, actually made a little bit of a floor above a floor, and now it is blasting higher. So this is very important, a very important sector for tech if we are going to have a tech-led summer rally, which I do think we are. And looking at Qualcomm, which is one of the bigger movers. You can see this chart is absolutely beautiful. Very sharp move up into the 200. I wouldn't be buying the stock right now because after you have an extended move up into the 200, you usually get a pullback. But if we get a pullback into this area right here, about 145 or so, should be right in line with that 8-period exponential moving average. I think that wouldn't be a bad area to take a shot on Qualcomm. And if it does end up rolling over and crashing through that 50, we could put a rather tight stop on Qualcomm. But if this does end up being the start of the new uptrend for Qualcomm, not a bad entry point at all. Let's take a look at AMD. See, AMD not as strong as Qualcomm. And actually, let me go back to Qualcomm for a minute. This is also one that I don't own personally. It's in one of my kids' portfolios, but man, I really had I had an alert set on this software to alert me if it broke 110, which I kind of thought it was going to once it got down to below 120, and that's when I wanted to add, but unfortunately that never happened. But looking back at AMD, we can see AMD is moving right up into that 50-period simple moving average. So actually, even though semiconductors are strong right now, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they get soft here in the next couple of trading days or so. Jump over to NVIDIA. NVIDIA was one that I wanted to buy for a long time, and I finally started adding some NVIDIA once it broke 180. I've been adding the whole way down, so I have not a large position in NVIDIA. I was actually waiting for it to break this low right here before I really started adding a lot of shares to my position. But, you know, have a halfway decent position started. This thing is breaking above that 50-period simple moving average. So me and Nancy are pretty happy at the moment. Now, another one that I bought is Micron Technology. I've been waiting for this one for a long time. I started buying once it broke down into the support area. Added some more when it broke down to this area right here, down in the low 50s. And now it has moved all the way up to $62 a share at the moment. So I really like Micron Technology. I love the valuation on Micron Technology and the bright future that it has in front of it, even though in that article it did say that MU was a little soft on that news. But I can't imagine that that legislation wouldn't be helpful to Micron Technology as well. Now, another stock that I added during this recent pullback, like I was saying, I added NVIDIA, added MU, and I also started a position in DR Horton once it got down to this support area. Added right here, and then I added a bunch right here, and now DR Horton is up around $75 a share. One of the leaders in the home building industry, also pays a halfway decent dividend, right around about 2% at the moment. But I wanted some exposure in the housing industry. I do think once the housing industry gets past this recent softness, it should be rather bullish because of demand for the rest of the decade. So I want to start a position in DR Horton. Unfortunately, I didn't get a whole heck of a lot because we have a nice move up. I like to buy them as they are, you know, trending down a little bit into a a favorable valuation. I don't like to chase them very much on the way up. That doesn't get me very excited. And the last stock that I added on this recent pullback was LNG, Cheniere Energy. Added LNG once it got down into the, let me see if I can get this thing to work, in the mid 120s. Added some more at the 200, and now this thing is blasting higher. I'm actually surprised that LNG is as strong as it is, but they are going to be one of the leaders in natural gas transportation, pipelining, whatever you want to call it, for the rest of the decade, I would imagine. And, I wanted to have a piece of them in my portfolio. They just started paying a dividend, so hopefully with these cash flows, they're going to be able to increase that dividend going forward. And some other stocks that I added on this big pullback in the market is Apple. I had started adding a bunch of Apple once it dipped below 140. And you can see Apple is just screaming higher. I didn't really think that Apple was going to be one of the stronger stocks coming off the bottom, but it looks like it is. I know there's a lot of bearish talk about Apple with China, and Apple is kind of a one-trick pony with the iPhone sales. I think the iPhone sales represent over 80% of their revenue. You wouldn't think that with everything else they got going on with the App Store and, all their other products, but kind of a one-trick pony. So you have to be ever mindful of that with Apple because, if Apple starts cranking iPhone prices because of inflation, that's something that people might hold off on buying. I know I would. I like to hold off on buying a new phone anyway, but if, they really start cranking prices because of inflation, that's definitely going to be something I'm going to hold off even longer. So, but actually, pretty optimistic with this chart blasting above all these moving averages. We got that 200 just above it, but the way Apple has been moving up, I wouldn't be a bit surprised, if this thing goes smashing through that 200 period simple moving average if we get this summer rally. And last but not least, one that I've been adding a lot to was SWKS. One that I've been adding a lot to on this downtrend. I started adding a bunch when this thing dropped below 100. Right now it's at 107, so I have stopped adding, but Skyworks Solutions is one of my favorite stocks in the tech sector. They actually pay a pretty decent dividend as well. I think it was right around 3% when it was down near the lows, probably closer to 2.5% at the moment, but I think Skyworks Solutions has a very bright future as well. Now, some other stocks that I think are doing pretty good, that is good news for a potential summer rally, is the banking stocks. I do own a position in Goldman Sachs. You can see Goldman Sachs looks like it is breaking this downtrend in a big way. This thing has gone straight up, so that is a good sign for Goldman Sachs potentially breaking this long downtrend and starting to move up. You can see all the volume that's been pouring in, so it looks like institutions are starting to position themselves for this one, potentially starting a new uptrend. A lot of these have come out with earnings, so it's nice to see how these stocks react after earnings. You can see Citigroup had a sharp move up after earnings and has been rising ever since. Wells Fargo, same exact thing. Nice bottoming formation that Wells Fargo is putting in. And another one that I own is JP Morgan. JP Morgan got wrecked when their earnings came out, but immediately reversed and is holding that 8-period exponential moving average ever since. I think if JP Morgan can break 116, it should have a nice pop to the upside. So this is one I am watching very closely and potentially looking to buy some options on it in the short term. And a couple other ones that are still on my watch list that I haven't taken a position in yet is DNA. I think this one is building up a lot of pressure. This one is probably going to end up blasting off without me if I don't get in on it soon. And another one was Rocket Mortgage. This one, Rocket Mortgage or Rocket Companies. This one kind of took off without me, but it didn't really, explode out of this little consolidation that it was making like I hoped. But I mean, actually it's a pretty decent move because it broke out from about 885 and now it's trading at 960. So very nice move in Rocket Companies, but unfortunately I did not take a trade in Rocket Companies. But just want to do a little bit of an update for you guys. If you guys see anything decent, make sure you let me know in the comment sections. I've been rather busy, so I haven't been able to go through as many charts as I usually do, but hopefully I can get back to it next week. I am feeling a lot better this week, so that is a good thing. But I'm going to end the video right there. Thank you so much for watching this all the way to the end. And until next time, take care, everybody.